welcome to Money Talk Monday, where we discuss money. And so, with today's topic of graduating without student loans, I know that's a topic not really discussed usually when people talk about going to college. They talk about, cool, I got to go ahead and apply to take out student loans to pay for these, large tuitions that continue to grow and skyrocket. So it's been pretty crazy over the last couple decades how fast college tuition has been growing. And so, a lot of the college tuition nowadays is like $60, $80, $100,000 per year. I've heard stories where it's something crazy like that, or it's like $40,000 per year. But remember, college is 4 years, so 4, 8, 12, $160,000 in debt by the time you get out. Not to mention, like room and board and all that stuff. So college can be expensive. So we're gonna go ahead and pretty much take a look at 4 different ways so you can go ahead and pay for college without actually having to take out any sort of student loans. So today's video is going to be for anyone who is thinking about going into university or college, or currently in high school or maybe middle school, or thinking about going back to college. Maybe they never started or never finished. And we're going to be taking a look at how to go ahead and do it without having to actually take out any sort of student loans. That way, when you do graduate, you're not graduating with like $40,000, $50,000 in debt. I know the average American usually tends to graduate from college with at least actually over is like $38,000 in student loan debt. And I've talked to a lot of like parents of friends and whatnot, and they'll always talk about how like they just finished paying off their student loan debt when they're 40, 50 years old. So that's debt that you have to pay off for 20, 30 years. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the 4 ways that we can go ahead and pay for college without any sort of student loans. Well, the first one is going to be choose a school you can afford. I know this might sound, a little crazy, but usually when you go on campus, a lot of the money where they'll allocate a large part of their money at the university is going to be in the scenery. Because when we go ahead and visit the campus, we're going to have that emotional attachment. Oh, we felt really nice at that campus. It looked very pretty. The buildings looked really nice. So that's actually where a lot of universities go and spend most of the money on these nice fancy buildings so that we can build this emotional attachment with a lot of the institutions, whichever institutions we decide to go ahead and visit. Oh, I really love this institution because it has this beautiful garden and it's got this amazing building that I can go ahead and study. Little do you realize it's $40,000, $60,000 a year, and now they suck you because of a nice pretty garden or this nice building, right? So you want to go ahead and take a look at schools you can't actually go ahead and afford. Now, a way to sort of, cut away from the sort of more expensive schools, if you can, right? It depends on your situation, of course. I'll admit that. Just try not to even look at colleges that are pretty much too far out of your pocket, right? So if you can only afford, let's say, $10,000, $20,000, and this is already after scholarships and all that, then don't look at, schools that are going to make you pay more than that. Again, keep in mind scholarships and all that, because then you might get that emotional attachment. So just cut it off cold turkey and only look at universities within your budget, right? So it's like shopping for a house or even a new pair of shoes. You're not gonna go shopping for a pair of shoes at $1,000 when your budget's $100, $200, right? It wouldn't make sense. So it's sort of the same way, especially because if you do go into like those nice shops that are $1,000 worth of shoes, or you go to the home that's $500,000 when your budget is only $250,000, you're gonna get that emotional attachment to that item, and now you can't even afford it. So it's like, oh, that sucks, right? So just go ahead and don't even look at universities that are, too out of your budget. Now, a couple options could be community school. You could always go to your local community college. There's, again, for some reason, there's like a shame with, oh, if I go to community college, I'm like dumber or whatever. It's like what I've noticed, but it's like, no, it's still the same education, right? I've met a bunch of friends who have gone from community college and they actually transfer over. Actually, one of my tutors, when I was going to when I first started at the university, he came from community college and then transferred over to university, and he's brilliant. He straight A student, did really good. So college really is what you make of it. University, whatever, it's the experience and the education you actually get. Even if you feel like you're not going to learn from community college, or you feel like you're not learning from your current university, even though it's maybe perhaps affordable, you can always invest in books, right? You can always continue to invest in your education, especially nowadays with technology too. You could always invest in your own education as well. You don't just have to wait for for you to learn in school as well. Another one you could also check out is trade school. Trade school is a really great option as well to go ahead and develop your skills. So those are just a couple options as well. And then to sort of add some perspective on what people perceive as like, oh, a qualifying or a good degree. I have a older friend who's like in his 50s. He went to a university. Of course, this was like 20, 30 years ago where he got his master's, and that university actually doesn't even exist anymore. But people don't care that the university doesn't exist. He's still got his bachelor's. He's still got his master's in mathematics. They don't care that the university doesn't exist. All they care about is, do you understand the material? Do you have the knowledge, right? The education? And do you have, that maybe perhaps the diploma is like a nice entry point. But what they really care about is, do you understand the material? Do you have the knowledge and information? That's all these other institutions that are hiring really care about. Do you know the information, right? And from there, the second way to go to college without paying for any sort of student loans is to apply for scholarships and grants. So you can look at applying for scholarships and grants as sort of like a part-time job, right? If you know you can't afford school, why not go ahead and use OPM, right? So that's going to be other people's money. So there's a lot of institutions and all these like richer people that have a lot more money, right? A lot more money than we currently have, who are willing to go ahead and say, you know what, I want to go ahead and do this good cause of helping people go to school. So all you pretty much have to do is go ahead and apply to these things. Now, of course, it takes time. So you can't see this as sort of a part-time job, applying to scholarships and grants and things like that to get free money. I mean, it really is free money for you to go ahead and invest in yourself for education. So spend an hour every single day just trying to go ahead and apply for these different scholarships. And granted, I know the 1 hour might sound kind of like, you're making it sound like you apply for an hour and then you get the money. It's like, trust me, I know it's not the way it works. There's a lot of scholarships where you have to apply and then you have to get chosen out of like this large pool. But over time, you're going to get a nice return on your investment of time. Because imagine if you apply for a scholarship that's even, let's say, you get picked for a scholarship that's only $200 to $500, let's say, for example. Well, I mean, imagine that took you 5 hours. Well, even within the 5 hours that you just spent, you made $100 per hour. If you think about it as like a time to, get the actual application sort of thing or the scholarship, right? You still made $500 for 5 hours worth of time. That's technically you just paid yourself $100 per hour for going out and scouting scholarships and grants and all that. So don't ever be afraid to get the smaller scholarships as well as the big ones too, of course. But, don't be afraid to go and completely diversify what scholarships you're going to go after. And again, just be consistent with it over time. 1 hour every day, you should be solid. So the third way, you can go ahead and pay for college without any student loans. You can go ahead and work during college. I've met quite a few friends who I've met friends of friends who mentioned how they don't want to go ahead and work while they're going to school because they just want to go ahead and enjoy the experience and, they're already in debt anyway, so it doesn't matter. But no, take the opposite approach. They found if you actually go ahead and work at least part-time, 20 hours a week, it makes you learn more about responsibility and accountability, right? And from there, you actually end up doing better within your classes. Now, I would kind of advise if you can, don't overextend yourself. Don't commit yourself to 60 hours a week while going to school unless you really think you can go to school and work, full-time 40-hour job sort of thing. So right there, I would say, know yourself, have some sort of self-awareness and what it is you're going to do. For me personally, I have no problem working full-time, but some other people might not, right? So it just depends, like, know yourself as well. So that's a third way you could go ahead and do it. And then actually, work-study programs, I have that for school as well. You could always check those out. And then I learned about this while at the university. You could work as what's called an RA or resident advisor. So where a lot of the money, costs come from when it comes to school is living on campus, like the room and board. So you can actually apply to become what's called a resident advisor, where you're pretty much like this person within like the residency hall that coordinates things and things like that. But because of that position, you get additional perks such as, I believe it's like free room and board. So you get like a free room, board. You get free food on the campus as well. It's like a certain limit, but it's still a fair amount for you to go ahead and live off of as well. So yeah, because I met a friend who is currently an RA at the university, and I was like, wait, so you get free room, free board, you get free food, you get all these free additional things just because his job is to work within the residency hall, even though technically he is currently within that city, so he doesn't even have to live on campus, but he just chooses to because it's free. So that is something you could go ahead and take a look at. Even with other jobs, when you're applying for work, I know even at my job, well, before the pandemic anyways, they would offer like a couple $1,000s per semester to go ahead and help pay for school. So jobs do go ahead, like, think about it, jobs actually want you to go ahead and improve yourself, build your education, develop yourself. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, because we see you're in school, if you go ahead and make sure you apply for like classes, let's say within mathematics or some sort of field that's related to whatever sort of current position you're applying for, working in, or industry you're working in, they're usually going to go ahead and be fine with you saying, hey, can I go ahead and use the $5,000 that you guys offer for scholarship for students? And they'll usually go ahead and give that to you. And granted, with the pandemic, for me personally at least, they did cut that off. I qualified a month before the pandemic happened, and the pandemic hit, and then they completely cut it off. So I was like, dang, that sucks. But normally in normal situations, your current positions, your current job, they'll go ahead and actually help pay for your tuition as well. So they'll assist you. So you could think of that as like a free scholarship as well. So that's another cool way to go ahead and pay for college tuition. Now, the last way to go ahead and pay for some college tuition is you can actually live at home. If you can go ahead and go to college locally, there's, again, nothing wrong with going to college locally. Stay at home with your parents, stay at home with whoever you currently live, save the extra, $10,000-$20,000 you would pay for room and board, and just live at home, right? And if you live at home and you go ahead and work part-time, so you just save yourself like an extra $10,000 because you're living at home. Hopefully you can do some sort of like rent-free sort of thing, at least while you're going to school. And even if not, I know paying a couple $100s per month compared to a couple $1,000s, right? It's a lot cheaper to even rent a room if you really have to. And then you can also go ahead and work as well. And again, try and look into these other jobs like that will help pay for your school. Hopefully some scholarship and grants as well will help with your college tuition. But living at home definitely takes a nice chunk of that college overall expenses that it costs to go to school, just by simply making the decision of, I'm going to stay at home and just live home, hopefully, again, rent-free, but if not, cheaper than what it would cost to go ahead and actually live at the actual institution. So these have just been 4 ways that you can actually go ahead and pay for college without student loans. And now, lastly, I did want to go ahead and take a look at, what if you still, can't go ahead and you still have to go ahead and go to a college institution that perhaps is more than what you can afford, right? Let's say $100,000, $200,000, maybe because you're like a medical student or something like that. Well, the way I think about it is there's also no shame in extending how long you go to school, right? So if you know you're going to go to school, let's say for a 4-year program, why not go to school for, let's say, 6 years, extending the 4 years just a little longer than normal? You're still taking out the same amount, right? The same amount of tuition that's needed because you're still doing the 4-year program, but now you have more time to go ahead and work, and you have more time to sort of extend how much time you have to actually go ahead and pay this off as well. So it's just another idea, right? If you know you're like a medical student, or like any sort of like ones where it requires a lot of tuition up front because of just the nature, right? Medical requires a lot of money. I totally get it. I have family that are interested in medical, and I've talked to them. It does require a fair amount of money to go ahead and invest in. If it's still something you want to do, that's fine. Go ahead. There's nothing wrong with extending it from 4 years to 6 years, and now you can also maybe perhaps work full time because now you're extending the courses to a 6-year time frame, and so you can perhaps work a few more hours while you're going to school. So now you've extended the amount of time you have to pay off. Let's say the entire 4-year program costs $200,000, so you're extending the amount of time you have to 6 years, and you're also giving yourself more time to make additional money because you work more hours as well, right? So those are a couple of ideas that you could also do if you do have to pay for school where it's $200,000-$300,000 or $100,000 or whatever, anything that's outside of your budget. It's just something you could also try to do where you extend how long you go to school, perhaps even going part-time. 6-8 years is fine, but then you're also working full-time and you're able to pay for school. So it's just a couple of 4 different ways you can go ahead and pay for college without any sort of student loans. Again, the highlights, choose a school you can actually afford. Now, I know that might seem sort of commonsensical, but don't allow yourself to get emotionally attached to a school where it's $50,000 and your budget's $5,000, right? So just look at schools that you can actually afford. 2, apply for scholarships and grants. Before you even get accepted to any colleges while you're in high school, trust me, even though you think you're busy in high school, you're not going to be as busy you're going to be even busier when you're in college. So take the time you do have in high school, middle school even, right, and apply for just different scholarships, an hour every single day on the weekends. Maybe you double to 2 hours, and over time, you can think of that as a part-time job because that's an extra couple $1,000s you could rack up over time. The third idea is to just work during college, and I personally think it's also good to take a look at what jobs you're going to go ahead and look at. So again, with the RA or resident advisor, they go ahead and pay for your room and board. They help pay for your food as well. So that's like two large expenses you don't have to worry about, like rent and food. So imagine if you got a full ride scholarship for your actual tuition, you'd be set, right? And then also looking at other positions where they'll just pay for at least part of your school just because you're studying math or because they like they're studying some other field within that current industry. They'll go ahead and pay for that as well. And then lastly, the last principle is to live at home. Room and board usually costs, I found, anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000. So average of $10,000. Could be more, it could be less, of course. But living at home, I think there's like the stigma of, oh, you shouldn't live at home. You're a college student now. You should just live on your own and be wild. But it's like there's no shame in living at home, because these $100,000, $200,000 of debt that you might potentially graduate with are with you till you die, right? So you have to continue to pay it off. And now when you graduate with this little diploma, this piece of paper, you're going to be, again, the average of most graduates end up graduating with over $38,000 of student loan debt. So ideally, the best way to avoid this is to not even take out any sort of student loans. And that's sort of the idea for today's video, is to have a couple of ideas outside the box of how to pay for college without any sort of student loans whatsoever. So when you graduate, you're not starting in the negatives. Like, you could think of it sort of like the bar is here. If you graduate with $30,000 in student loan debt, financial bar, you graduate in the negatives, right? But if you graduate with zero loan debt, zero debt whatsoever, you're right there and you're ready to go. So when you get a job, you start increasing your financial sort of bar, if you will. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video discussing how to go ahead and pay for college without taking out any sort of student loans. This is most definitely possible. I know a lot of people get told you have to take out student loans, but you actually don't. It's a complete myth. You don't have to do it. You just sort of have to be aware of, okay, how can I make this maybe more cost effective? Am I getting the same sort of value of education? If you go to $100,000 college versus a $10,000 college, they're still going to teach you fairly the same amount of thing. The only rigor is the actual the process of getting accepted. But after that, the real education is what you make of it. So make it the best. All right. Wishing you guys a really great day. Thanks for tuning in.